The most dangerous verse, the book of Daniel, hides a secret about the last days you need to know. Biblical prophecy. The global elite don't want you to know this. An ancient alarm system, programmed 2,500 years ago, just started blaring. Look around. Banks restructuring overnight, governments seizing unprecedented control, media narratives shifting faster than you can track them. Coincidence? Far from it. What if these chaotic events were predicted with pinpoint accuracy by a Hebrew prophet who saw our exact moment in history while empires like Babylon still ruled the world? The Book of Daniel isn't gathering dust in some forgotten religious archive. It's a precision-engineered decoder ring for the chaos unfolding on your newsfeed right now. This prophetic blueprint maps out exactly how world powers would rise and fall until reaching our critical moment in history. It details the final global deception and reveals the ultimate test that will determine where you'll spend eternity. The most disturbing part? While these ancient warnings are hiding in plain sight, most Americans are completely oblivious to what's written inside. The countdown has started. The timeline is accelerating. The final decision point approaches. So here's the question that should keep you awake tonight. Are you prepared for what comes next? Because according to Daniel's visions, by the time most people recognize what's happening, the opportunity to prepare will have vanished. Drop a comment below with "awake" if you're seeing these prophecies unfold right before your eyes, and share this video with someone who needs this urgent warning before it's too late. Government officials and biblical scholars alike are stunned as an ancient prophecy, deliberately sealed until our lifetime, has just been activated in real time. The Book of Daniel isn't merely dusty history. It's a cosmic intelligence briefing meant specifically for this moment in human existence, containing secrets that waited 2,500 years to be revealed. While Sunday school lessons portray Daniel as just a brave man surviving lions and exile, they've missed the explosive truth. His writings contain precise coordinates for navigating today's global chaos. Even Jesus Christ urgently directed his followers to these prophecies, Matthew 24:15. Yet millions remain oblivious to their critical significance. Consider the remarkable parallel. A teenage Daniel, violently uprooted from everything familiar and thrust into Babylon's hostile environment, faced the ultimate loyalty test. Rather than conforming to save himself, he remained uncompromisingly faithful. Every challenge he encountered, every supernatural vision he recorded, was strategically documented, not just for his contemporaries, but as a preview of what believers in our generation will inevitably confront. Here's what religious institutions don't emphasize. God explicitly instructed Daniel to seal portions of his prophecies until the time of the end, not for past generations, but specifically for people alive today. This represents the most shocking celestial classified information in human history, now declassified. While society remains distracted by celebrity scandals and political theater, these awakened prophecies are unfolding with precision, leaving the unprepared vulnerable to what comes next. Daniel's extraordinary rise to become Babylon's second-in-command wasn't accidental. Divine intelligence transformed him from captive to kingmaker. His supernatural wisdom, strategic insight, and revelatory understanding positioned him to thrive within the very system designed to destroy him. This ancient blueprint offers immediate application for today. The same divine principles that elevated Daniel during Babylon's dominance can transform your financial trajectory, career advancement, and strategic positioning during our current global realignment. Those who access heaven's wisdom navigate chaos differently than those operating on earthly intelligence alone. But make no mistake, This revelation transcends mere financial prosperity. We're witnessing nothing less than spiritual warfare on a civilizational scale. An orchestrated campaign of deception intentionally blinds people to approaching realities, keeping them fixated on immediate gratifications while eternal consequences loom. Daniel experienced systematic identity erasure. His name changed, his culture banned, his faith criminalized. Today's cultural landscape mirrors this ancient strategy with alarming precision, pressuring believers to compromise fundamental truths for social acceptance and economic survival. Daniel's response reveals our path forward. Rather than surrendering to preservation instincts, he established non-negotiable spiritual disciplines. His prayer routine, fasting regimen, and unwavering commitment to truth weren't religious formalities. They were survival mechanisms that sustained him through Babylon's darkness. The question that should haunt every thinking person: will your spiritual foundation withstand what's coming? Your capacity to navigate approaching chaos depends entirely on what you're building in private today. Are we witnessing the final chapter Daniel foresaw unfolding before our eyes? And if so, which side of this cosmic divide will find you standing when the final page turns? What if you could access classified Pentagon-level intelligence about world events before they happen? A Hebrew captive did exactly that 2,500 years ago. And the most disturbing part? His forecast is playing out on today's global stage with bone-chilling precision. Daniel wasn't merely interpreting dreams in some dusty ancient court. He received high-definition visions spanning millennia, accurately predicting imperial powers rising and falling, pinpointing the Messiah's arrival, and mapping out global developments unfolding in our headlines right now. His ancient prophecies have already materialized with such surgical accuracy that intelligence agencies would kill for such predictive power. The real question hanging over your life: are you even paying attention? The most mind-blowing aspect of Daniel's prophetic playbook is its timeline precision for history's pivotal moments. Consider this reality check. These predictions were documented 2,500 years ago, yet Daniel accurately foresaw Persia's emergence, Greece's dominance, and Rome's iron-fisted rule across the known world. He even calculated the exact time frame when Jesus Christ would appear on the world stage. With this track record of prophetic precision, what does it mean for the remaining prophecies still awaiting fulfillment? This should stop you cold. If Daniel got everything right about the past, his forecasts about your future demand serious consideration. Let's get practical about how this affects your daily life. Think of prophecy as advanced intelligence for preparation. If meteorologists warned that a Category 5 hurricane was heading toward your neighborhood, you wouldn't casually ignore it. You'd immediately secure your property, safeguard your family, and mobilize your resources. That's precisely what these ancient warnings are calling you to do on a spiritual level. Daniel's prophecies aren't abstract religious concepts. They're urgent alerts about how to position yourself for what's already beginning. Here's what most biblical teachers never tell you. God doesn't reveal future events without providing strategic guidance for navigating them. Daniel didn't just receive apocalyptic visions. He was granted divine wisdom for surviving and thriving during dark times. He implemented specific disciplines: strategic fasting, strategic prayer, and surrounding himself with a faithful inner circle who reinforced his convictions. How resilient is your faith infrastructure right now? Have you developed the spiritual stamina to remain standing when everything around you starts violently shaking? Because make no mistake, seismic disruption is coming, and only those anchored in truth will remain upright. Consider something rarely connected to Daniel's prophecies: financial positioning, and influence capacity. Have you noticed the accelerating destabilization across global markets? Currencies being strategically undermined, economic influence being deliberately transferred, and entire industry sectors transforming virtually overnight? This isn't random market volatility. Daniel's forecasts specifically pointed to massive power realignments, and we're currently witnessing the preliminary staging for the final global configuration. This makes biblical principles of investment strategy, entrepreneurial positioning, and financial discernment more critically relevant than ever before. The world's economic structure is increasingly fragile, while God's economic principles remain unshakable. This brings us to the ultimate spiritual decision point. Daniel's prophecies weren't merely geopolitical forecasts. They revealed the climactic confrontation between truth and sophisticated deception. As history accelerates toward its final chapter, every person will face an unavoidable choice: align with God's unchanging standards or conform to a system strategically positioned against him. Intense pressure and psychological manipulation will be applied, and exactly as in Daniel's time, society will divide between those who bow to convenience and those who stand on conviction. Which category will you occupy when that moment arrives? Here's my direct challenge. Start paying serious attention. Study these prophecies systematically. Strengthen your faith infrastructure and implement comprehensive preparation, spiritually, financially, and psychologically, for what's rapidly approaching. What if I told you that your entire reality is being engineered by a power so calculating that even the Bible warned it would make a prophet physically ill when he saw it? Daniel, an ancient seer, collapsed after witnessing a vision of our time. A vision so disturbing it literally sickened him. Daniel 8:27. And the most terrifying part? Every detail of what he saw is materializing right before our eyes. In this prophetic nightmare, Daniel observed a monstrous beast with 10 horns representing world powers. But something unexpected occurred. A seemingly insignificant little horn began growing among them. This wasn't just another political entity. This horn systematically uprooted 3 established powers, seized unprecedented authority, and brazenly positioned itself as a divine authority. This mysterious little horn wasn't merely another kingdom. It represents a deceptive system engineered to manipulate, control, and ultimately persecute those who remain loyal to God. Biblical scholars have debated its identity for generations, but Scripture reveals its 5 unmistakable characteristics. It emerges from within established global powers, Daniel 7:7-8. It begins inconspicuously, but amasses extraordinary influence. Daniel 7:20. It fundamentally alters established laws and traditions. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. It actively targets God's faithful followers. Daniel 7:21. It speaks blasphemously, assuming divine authority. Daniel 7:25. This isn't ancient history. It's an urgent warning for today. Daniel foresaw a force that would completely redefine morality, distort objective truth, and methodically separate people from their faith. Look around. Aren't we witnessing truth being systematically redefined, moral boundaries deliberately blurred, and religious conviction increasingly marginalized? We're not approaching this prophesied time, we're living in it. Now for the uncomfortable question. Are you being imperceptibly influenced by this system? This power doesn't rely on obvious force. Its weapon is sophisticated deception. It infiltrates culture, education, entertainment, and politics with surgical precision. It portrays moral compromise as enlightenment, biblical truth as hatred, and religious conviction as dangerous extremism. This isn't tomorrow's threat. It's today's reality. Few recognize the connection between this prophecy and our financial systems. Do you honestly believe global economic transformations happen randomly? The power seeking to control spiritual allegiance simultaneously works to control material resources. Why? Because financial dependency creates vulnerability to manipulation. Daniel's vision reveals something crucial. The final conflict extends beyond religious beliefs. It's fundamentally about control. The more dependent you become on compromised systems, the more vulnerable you'll be when full allegiance is demanded. What's the solution to standing against such calculated deception? Daniel's ancient strategy remains our blueprint today. Divine wisdom, consistent prayer, regular fasting, and heavenly guidance. This explains why biblical principles of entrepreneurship, diversified income, and God-directed financial stewardship have become more critical than ever. Your capacity to remain faithful depends significantly on your ability to function independently of corrupted systems. Consider this final question. Is our world moving toward expanded freedom or intensified control? Are you recognizing these prophetic signs unfolding in your daily life? What government secret was so dangerous it had to be locked away for over 2 millennia, with explicit divine orders not to release it? That's the shocking reality of what happened to Daniel. The Creator himself commanded, "Shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end." These weren't just any prophecies. They were considered too explosive, too revealing for any previous generation to handle. Think about that for a moment. Information so powerful it required a divine classification system, sealed until our lifetime. What exactly did Daniel witness that warranted cosmic-level security clearance? And why is this classified intelligence suddenly becoming decipherable now? This should electrify you to your core, because the implications are staggering. If these ancient prophecies are finally making sense, we must be the terminal generation, the exact people these warnings were intended for. The verification code is embedded in the same passage. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Look around you. We're living in an unprecedented explosion of information. Digital technology, artificial intelligence, instantaneous global communication networks. Innovations that would have seemed like sorcery to our great-grandparents. But this prophecy points beyond technological advancement to something far more significant: spiritual illumination. For centuries, scholars examined Daniel's prophecies with limited comprehension. Now, these ancient texts are clarifying with astonishing precision. Here's where this directly impacts you. As these sealed prophecies unlock, the father of lies is launching his final counteroffensive. The escalating wave of false narratives, manipulated information, financial volatility, and growing anti-faith sentiment isn't coincidental. It's coordinated. The enemy's strategy is brilliant, create such overwhelming distraction and confusion that, when the ultimate test arrives, most people won't even recognize they're failing it. This revelation demands a personal response. If God is unveiling mysteries reserved specifically for our generation, we bear an enormous responsibility. Will you dismiss this intelligence and remain entangled in the matrix, or will you prepare spiritually, mentally, and financially? Daniel didn't merely receive information, he operationalized it. His prophetic insights positioned him as a kingmaker, a strategic advisor, and financial authority at the epicenter of global power. Why? Because he aligned himself perfectly with heaven's blueprint. Are you positioned similarly? Here's the intel no one discusses. Daniel's unsealed prophecies directly correlate with massive financial realignments happening now. As these predictions materialize, global economic systems are being fundamentally restructured. Wealth is transferring. Power is consolidating. Those who understand divine timing will be strategically positioned, while those ignoring these signals face catastrophic vulnerability. This makes biblical wisdom regarding entrepreneurship, strategic investments, and income diversification absolutely critical. My challenge stands. If knowledge is increasing exponentially, are you keeping pace? Are you pursuing truth? Are you making preparations? Or are the engineered distractions keeping you blind to what genuinely matters? Because the next phase is even more perilous. A global deception so sophisticated, so convincing, that even the most spiritually attuned believers risk being compromised. Imagine awakening suddenly to discover everything you accepted as reality was an elaborate fabrication. News networks, economic indicators, even consensus thinking, all meticulously engineered to control your decisions. The terrifying revelation? Daniel foresaw this exact scenario. His visions didn't merely outline geopolitical shifts. They exposed a massive end-times deception campaign, so persuasive it could potentially deceive even the most faithful. Matthew 24:24. But how do you successfully deceive an entire planet? Not overnight. You condition populations incrementally. You fragment attention spans. You systematically rewrite historical narratives, invert moral frameworks, and saturate society with partial truths until distinguishing reality from fiction becomes nearly impossible. Examine our cultural landscape. Isn't this precisely what's unfolding? The most dangerous aspect of deception. Those under its influence remain unaware of their condition. This makes Daniel's warnings crucially important. He witnessed a coming convergence where global leaders, religious institutions, and financial authorities would unite behind a false narrative. A time when truth would become so distorted that those standing for God would be labeled dangerous extremists. That convergence isn't approaching, it's actively underway. Consider the financial dimension. Are global economic shifts merely about inflation rates, interest fluctuations, and market cycles? Absolutely not. Control of wealth represents perhaps the most powerful tool in this deceptive arsenal. Why? Because financially desperate populations will accept virtually any solution, even those that eliminate their fundamental freedoms. Daniel's prophecy reveals the final deception includes a control system so comprehensive that non-compliance means economic exclusion. No buying, no selling, no participation. Daniel 7:25, Revelation 13:17. Does this pattern seem increasingly familiar? Most disturbing of all, this deceptive system won't appear sinister. It will present as the solution to humanity's greatest challenges, promising unity, peace, and prosperity. It will offer security, inclusivity, and equity while concealing its true objective: absolute control. This reality demands spiritual vigilance, financial independence, and unshakable rootedness in divine truth. Those dependent on corrupt systems become vulnerable to their demands. Those aligned with God's wisdom will experience supernatural provision, even during unprecedented crisis. My question stands: how can you be certain you're not already deceived? Have you thoroughly examined your beliefs? Have you questioned the narratives you're consuming? Are you actively pursuing truth or passively absorbing whatever information surrounds you? The final deception won't announce itself. It will feel natural, rational, even virtuous. But ultimately, the choice crystallizes: stand with God or surrender to the system. Do you recognize the deception taking shape? Are you observing the transformations accelerating around you? They face the death penalty for simply refusing to kneel. Every heartbeat in the crowd fell silent as the ultimatum echoed across the plain. Bow to the golden colossus when the music plays, or die in flames. This wasn't some ancient choose-your-own adventure. This was the terrifying reality 3 young Hebrew men faced in Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood frozen while an entire empire collapsed to its knees around them. Imagine the weight of that moment. Thousands of eyes burning into them, officials whispering, soldiers tightening their grips on weapons. These weren't powerful men. They were captives, foreigners, refugees. Death by furnace wasn't theoretical. They could see the flames leaping from a distance. Yet they remained upright when everyone else bent. Why? They understood something profound. The King of Kings outranked Nebuchadnezzar. Here's the bone-chilling truth most people miss. This ancient showdown wasn't just history. It was prophecy in action. Revelation 13:15 describes an eerily similar scenario headed our way. A global system demanding universal allegiance to an image with deadly consequences for those who refuse. The choice will be identical to what those young men faced: comply or resist. When that moment arrives in your lifetime, which side of history will you occupy? The conformity machine is already operational. It doesn't require golden statues. It works through social pressure, career advancement, financial incentives, and cultural acceptance. Every day, millions silently surrender their convictions to avoid being labeled, canceled, or excluded. But what happens when standing for truth means losing your livelihood, your social standing, your financial security? The test run is happening now. Consider the economic parallels. Nebuchadnezzar's demand wasn't merely religious. It was a brilliantly designed control mechanism. Non-compliance meant immediate branding as enemies of the state. Today's experimental financial tracking systems, digital currency frameworks, and social credit infrastructures follow the same blueprint. Soon, refusing to align with certain ideologies could mean losing access to your bank accounts, payment systems, and marketplace participation. Daniel's prophecy revealed both spiritual and economic dimensions of this final test. Those who refuse future compliance will face financial isolation. But remember the astonishing twist in the furnace story. When thrown into the inferno, those 3 men weren't alone. A 4th figure, described as appearing like the Son of God, joined them in the flames. Daniel 3:25. They emerged without even the smell of smoke on their clothes. The lesson is clear. God doesn't always prevent the fire, but He walks through it with His faithful. Are you building the spiritual, mental, and financial resilience to stand when millions bow? This biblical account isn't just inspiring history. It's a prophetic preview of your immediate future. They threw Him to hungry lions, and He didn't get a scratch. They demanded He bow to a golden idol or burn alive, and He walked through fire untouched. When history's greatest empires tried to break Him, they shattered instead. What did Daniel possess that made him indestructible when everything and everyone was against him? The answer isn't some mystical superpower. It's something so ordinary you might miss its extraordinary impact. Consistency. Daniel wielded a secret weapon that wasn't built in moments of crisis, but forged through daily discipline. While others panicked when disaster struck, Daniel remained unmoved because his foundation was already established. He didn't suddenly discover faith when facing lions' teeth. He had been preparing his spirit every single day through unwavering devotion. Here's what separated Daniel from everyone else. 3 times daily he dropped to his knees in prayer, non-negotiable, regardless of royal decrees or death threats, not just during emergencies, not just when convenient, every single day. This daily discipline created an unshakable core that couldn't be intimidated when the entire Persian Empire targeted him. When laws changed and pressure mounted, Daniel didn't bend because his spiritual backbone had been strengthened through thousands of consistent choices. So what about you? What invisible foundation are you standing on? When your 401 chaos plummets, when your job security evaporates, when everything familiar starts crumbling, what remains? Without a foundation built before chaos arrives, you won't suddenly discover stability in the middle of the storm. Daniel's success formula included another element most people overlook: community. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego weren't just friends. They were his spiritual SEAL team. Together they formed an unbreakable alliance that withstood imperial pressure. If you believe you'll navigate coming challenges in isolation, history suggests otherwise. Daniel's spiritual discipline wasn't compartmentalized. It transformed every aspect of his life. His consistency in prayer fueled his professional excellence. His fasting sharpened his spiritual perception. His obedience to God's principles opened doors to supernatural insight that positioning him as Babylon's greatest economic advisor. The most overlooked aspect of Daniel's story? His spiritual foundation made him financially bulletproof. The same divine wisdom that let him interpret dreams gave him exceptional stewardship abilities, resource management skills, and economic foresight. That's why biblical financial principles aren't optional accessories. They're essential armor for the challenges ahead. Are you building this kind of unshakable foundation today? Are you establishing spiritual disciplines that will hold firm when everything else gives way? Are you seeking wisdom not just for immediate challenges, but for what history suggests is coming? Picture yourself standing on history's most consequential battlefield. This isn't just nations competing for territory. This is an eternal conflict reaching its climax. Deception saturates every institution. Confusion reigns. Just when it appears darkness will overwhelm everything, a divine commander appears. Daniel 12:01 reveals this pivotal moment. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince who stands for the children of your people. This isn't an ordinary angelic appearance. This is heaven's supreme military commander stepping onto the battlefield. Throughout Scripture, Michael appears at history's most critical junctures, casting Satan from heaven, Revelation 12:7 to 9, contending for Israel, Jude 1:9, and intervening in supernatural conflicts, Daniel 10:13. But in Daniel's final vision, Michael doesn't just fight, he takes his stand. Something unprecedented is unfolding. Why does heaven's highest-ranking warrior need to intervene? Because what's approaching isn't merely economic instability or political upheaval. It's spiritual warfare of unprecedented scale. Daniel 12:01 continues with this sobering assessment. There shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Financial systems will collapse, governments will fail, social structures will disintegrate. Only those with spiritual moorings will remain standing. The uncomfortable truth is that most people are spiritually unprepared for what's coming. Distracted by endless entertainment, fixated on temporary success, and spiritually malnourished, they remain vulnerable to deception. You can accumulate wealth, achieve recognition, and gain influence, but without spiritual fortification, you'll be defenseless in the final conflict. Every prophetic transition throughout history has accompanied economic and political transformation. The coming spiritual confrontation will intertwine with financial control systems, economic dependence, and global governance structures. This is precisely why understanding biblical wealth principles, income diversification, and financial independence has never been more critical. When the system demands conformity in exchange for economic participation, Those dependent on that system face impossible choices. Yet despite these sobering realities, there's extraordinary hope. God never abandons his people when they need him most. Michael's intervention signals the end of deception's reign. It announces coming justice. It guarantees deliverance. Daniel 12:01 confirms this promise. At that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. The essential question remains, are you preparing now for what history and prophecy suggest is approaching? Have you developed the spiritual, mental, and financial resilience to stand firm when unprecedented pressure demands your compromise? Now let's make this personal. What about you? What are you building your life on? Because let me tell you something. If your faith is weak now, it will not survive what's coming. If you're compromising in the small things, you will compromise when the real test comes. And if your security is in the world system, your job, your bank account, your reputation, what will happen when it demands your allegiance? And let's talk about one of the biggest deceptions in the final days, financial control. The mark of the beast isn't just a religious issue, it's an economic one. No one will be able to buy or sell unless they conform. Revelation 13:17. That means the final battle isn't just about belief, it's about who controls the money. And if you are 100% tied to the system, you will have no choice when it turns against you. But here's the good news. God always, always provides a way out. Daniel wasn't just a survivor. He thrived in Babylon because he lived by divine wisdom. He had influence. He had resources. He was prepared. And that's why seeking God's wisdom in finances, investments, and entrepreneurship isn't just about success. It's about survival. When the world system collapses, those who walk in divine strategy will be the ones standing. And now the final question. Where do you stand? Are you preparing? Are you strengthening your faith? Are you positioning yourself for what's coming? Because let me tell you, this isn't a game. The clock is ticking, the final kingdom is rising, and when the choice is put before you, there will be no middle ground. So I'll leave you with this. Will you stand with God when the world bows? What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about tomorrow. This isn't wild speculation or internet conspiracy. It's ancient prophecy unfolding on your television screen in real time. Right now, global powers are aligning exactly as Daniel predicted, and a decision point is rapidly approaching that will force every single American, including you, to choose a side. You've just been handed insider information that 99% of people will miss completely. The signs are everywhere. Financial systems transforming overnight, deception becoming normalized, freedoms quietly disappearing. But recognizing these patterns isn't enough to save you when everything collapses. Knowledge without action is worthless. If you fail to prepare spiritually, mentally, and financially right now, you'll crumble when the real test arrives. Remember, Daniel didn't merely survive in Babylon. He thrived and influenced kings because he saw what others couldn't. He created a life that stood independent from corrupt systems. He possessed divine strategic insight, financial independence, and uncompromising faith when everyone else bowed to pressure. Ask yourself honestly, do you? The countdown has begun. Events are accelerating beyond anyone's control, and the moment of ultimate decision is approaching faster than you think. When that day comes, will you stand firm like Daniel or bend under pressure? If this message has awakened something inside you, hit that comment button and type "prepared" right now. And if you want the complete blueprint for surviving what's coming next, you need to watch my next video. Trust me. What I'm about to reveal could be the difference between your survival and destruction in the days ahead.